So last night, I got to listen to Tamara Lich live. For those of you who don't know Tamara is, she was the kind of the figurehead, the spokeswoman for the Freedom Convoy movement. She was everywhere. And she recounted her tale, and her tale's not yet over. Part of her saga and venture was that she spent 45 days in prison. Can you believe it? Yes, and in solitary confinement as well. So certainly not an easy road, but this woman is remarkably strong and determined, and she is, in my estimation, a proud, shining example of what a Canadian is. And like I said, her saga is not yet over because she's still going to court on September 5th in Ottawa to face charges still. Yes, charges because she's deemed to be a terrorist, a woman who's 5'1" and 115 pounds. Yes, somebody we ought to fear. But anyway, one of the things I got to, my takeaway from listening to her was she was talking about the country as a whole and, you know, how Canadians were divided and that sort of thing. But she found a lot of people that she had a lot in common with. And so I started thinking, what is it as Canadians we have in common? I mean, we obviously know through the last 3 years there was differing viewpoints. People were on the one side with mandates and lockdowns or whatever else there was, and others saw the world totally different. So what is it that we share with those Canadians on the other side? What is it that will unite us as Canadians? Because we know politicians use division all the time. But unless we recognize what we have as allies in this battle, in this push against the establishment, against bureaucratic state, the deep state, basically the like I said, the bureaucratic government regulated state we're up against, we're going to lose. And so we do have to find common ground. So I would love to hear from some of you. What does it mean to be a Canadian? What do you think of? I know when I think of what it means to be an American, I think of the First Amendment, Second Amendment, freedom of speech, the right to bear arms. I think of apple pie, baseball, a Revolutionary War. I think of all of that. I think of the bravado that Americans have, just their simple desire or push to just be larger than life. But what does it mean to be Canadian? For the longest time, being Canadian meant being polite and nice. Well, having lived through the last 3 years, I don't necessarily think all of us are that, are we? I mean, we had fellow citizens who had no qualms with their fellow citizens losing their jobs, being forced to, basically live on welfare, and being forced to take drugs, pharmaceutical interventions against their will. That doesn't sound like nice people to me. So what is it that we share with those other fellow Canadians? Because I'll tell you what, unless we have common things that we ally around, and it's some kind of a culture or something of what Canada represents, we all become very individualistic in our approach, and we only worry about what we're going to get out of this country and what our piece of it will be. And for that, and when that happens, the politicians will relish that because it's easy for them to divide us. That's what happens. The bureaucratic deep state does that because they find those fault lines along which they can divide people. So I think it's really important. I would love to hear from you folks. What does it mean to be a Canadian? What does it mean to you? What does Canadian identity look like? What is the, what does it typify to be a Canadian? How are you viewing that to be in today's day and age, especially after the last 3 years? Like I said, I'd love to hear your feedback and comments because I think it's really important, because unless we kind of analyze what we share in common, we're not going to be able to find common ground to some degree, because it's hard to kind of tear a country apart. I mean, we can be ideologically different, but unless we can find people with common values, beliefs, and ideas, we're not going to be able to stand against the bulwark, this heavy push by these deep statists, by these globalists to basically, colonize Canadians within Canada and to basically enslave them. Anyway, like I said, I welcome your thoughts. Please share with me what it means to you to be Canadian. I would love to hear it. And where you think Canada needs to be, or where identity has to be, and what things that we have to be seeking in order to, push off or get rid of these shackles that are binding us, and more so every day. Anyway, I thank you for watching. I do appreciate it. Please post any comments you have in my comment section. You can also follow me on my Rumble and my Locals account. If you haven't yet followed me on Twitter, you can at Camera612, and I will see you next time.